A very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Akshita and I'm part of the marketing team here at MoEngage. I welcome all of you to our webinar today on the topic of using data-driven marketing to boost customer engagement. Before we begin the webinar, let's do a quick technical check and also go through some ground rules. If you can hear me, click on the raise hand option on the right hand side of your screen so we know the audio is working. All right, so I think we see a few hands, so we'll proceed. If you have any issues viewing the screen or if you are unable to hear the audio, please leave your comments in the chat section and someone from our team will help you out with that. Meanwhile, this is a live webinar and together we'll walk through the various facets of customer engagement and the role of data in implementing these strategies. We have a Q&A at the end of the webinar and we'll answer your questions at that point. However, you can key in your questions all through the webinar using the chat window. Feel free to key in your questions. Please mention the name of the speaker whom you'd like to address the question to. We'll pick up the questions at the end and our experts will share their answers with you. Another important information, we'll share a recording of this webinar along with a summary after the webinar. So relax and enjoy the webinar today. All right, so let's get started. We have an interesting mix of speakers today. Our first speaker is a seasoned e-tail professional with rich experience across functions like marketing, analytics, and product. Please welcome Pooja Ravishankar, Head of Category Marketing at BigBasket. Our second speaker, Anjan Bhojarajan, is a tech geek, entrepreneur, and part of HealthifyMe's growth story from 2 million to 10 million users. Anjan is currently VP Growth and Head of Product at HealthifyMe. So while we are at introductions, I'll also take a quick minute to introduce MoEngage. For those of you who are not familiar with MoEngage, we are a customer engagement platform that helps consumer brands build meaningful conversations with their audiences. We help top brands in over 35 countries build personalized engagement across a host of digital channels, bringing these companies closer to their customers. In today's age, there's no excuse for not knowing what your customers want. There are a wide variety of tools that enable marketers like us to capture data at various stages of marketing campaigns. We don't need to guess what our users want anymore. We just need to know where to look. In fact, many organizations realize the importance of being data-driven. However, only a few of them really nail it. So what are the tenets of data-driven marketing? In today's webinar, we'll understand the need for personalized communication, how user personas are important and how they decide product flows, machine learning examples impact on your marketing, internal marketing processes, how data can be leveraged, and the role of marketing automation. And the best part, we're going to hear about examples and stories from HealthifyMe and BigBasket and how they achieve customer success. All right, so I think let's get started. I'm not going to take any more of your time. I now welcome Pooja to step in and share her learnings and advice on data-driven marketing. Over to you, Pooja.
Thanks, Akshita. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all had a good lunch, but I also hope it is not too good a lunch because that makes Anjan and my job a lot harder, to kind of keep you awake. So I hope this webinar is of interest to you and of use to you. So Anjana, Akshita, could you go to the next slide? All right, a bit about BigBasket. Probably a lot of you would have heard about BigBasket, but for those who haven't, we're India's largest online grocer. We deliver fruits and vegetables, staples, and really all the household needs on the same day. We have about 1 million monthly customers who shop from us, and we deliver about 2 million or actually close to about 2.5 million orders on a monthly basis. In the last 8 months, we also started a milk subscription, actually a grocery subscription business, and we deliver about 1 million milk orders every month to customers across the country. Another interesting tidbit about BigBasket is that we have 8,000 farmer connections who directly supply fruits and vegetables and staples to us. So that's a little bit about what BigBasket does. Next slide. So since today's topic is about data and about data in marketing, the millennial marketer, as I often put it, eats data for breakfast. So this is where marketing has evolved to in the current day and age. Companies, and especially online companies, collect a lot of data, treasure trove of data about customers, every little aspect and facets of the customer that hitherto offline companies could not do, and probably even now it's a lot harder to collect this kind of data. But the real value of this is not just about collecting this data, or it is about how to use this data to provide the best customer experience to your customers. So what are the two most important things for a marketer? One is customer acquisition, and then once you've acquired that customer, it's retain that customer. So typically your marketing channels provide a way to acquire your customers. That's your digital marketing, like your SEO, SEM, Facebook ads, Google ads, and then it could be your offline marketing, such as your print media, TV, radio, etc. These are the channels through which you can acquire customers. And while you can optimize and spend your budgets better there, the real challenge is to be able to provide a customer experience that will provide you a very high rate of retention. And since these and the other channel that which acts as a touch point to your customer is really your product. So the examples that we will be using with respect to BigBasket today will be both in terms of the internal marketing channels that we have, and the second thing is, where does the customer spend the most time? Once he is acquired, it's on your app. And therefore, how do you leverage the product in order to better engage your users, and therefore how to use data to be able to deliver this product experience? And I'll go on to the next example, few examples, and I hope that you guys will enjoy this or find it useful. Next slide. All right, so this is one of our star products from BigBasket. It's called a Smart Basket. Since we are in the grocery business, grocery buying is of a repeat nature. Typically a household would buy fruits and vegetables maybe once or twice a week. You'd buy your atta, rice, pulses, etc. maybe once a month. Top it up maximum at 2 times a month. You buy your detergents probably once a month, detergents and so on, such products. So grocery buying is of a repetitive nature. Therefore, what we thought was, since and pretty much customers would tend to go towards the same kind of products, we said that, hey, why don't we build this feature that predicts what the customer is running out in his household as of today. So therefore, the Smart Basket's main aim is to predict and create a list of products that the customer is most likely to buy as of today. So next slide. Some of you might be BigBasket users, and it's pretty easy to find the Smart Basket. You go onto the first page on the home page, and probably the first 1.5 or 2 scrolls, you'll find the entry point to the Smart Basket. Do go and check it out and see if it's useful. So what the Smart Basket does, one interesting data point is that our most loyal customers do a majority of their shopping on the Smart Basket. And for the new users who are relatively new to the Smart Basket, new to BigBasket, the Smart Basket doubles up as a smart assistant for your shopping. It basically suggests you a list of products that most other customers seem to be buying, right? It also helps in ranking the products by the need of the day, which means that, let's say you're most likely to run out of Ashirvad atta today. That is that would be ranked higher than other products, because that's going to run out in your kitchen as of today. So what we've studied is we've been able to reduce the shopping time to about 7 minutes, and this is actually remarkable because our average basket quantity, as we call it, runs into about 30-35 products for a regular user. So reducing that amount of shopping, I'm not very sure if there are any competition worldwide that will enable this kind of shopping time for such a large list of items. The other thing, and this I will cover in detail in the next few slides, is the Smart Basket also offers recommendations to the customer based on his shopping behavior and mapping it with the shopping behavior of all other customers. Lastly, it also does some interesting things. For example, if you are a customer who switched from regular potato to, let's say, organic potato, the Smart Basket understands this and starts showing up the organic potato higher than the regular potato, and over a period of time the regular potato will fall off your Smart Basket list. This serves two purposes. One, of course, as a retailer, it's really good for us that a customer is premiumizing, and secondly, and more importantly, it's able to understand the changing shift in the customer's buying patterns. So if somebody is becoming more health oriented or more premium in his requirements, it's able to recognize this. The other thing that the Smart Basket also does is keeps in season, keeps mind in season. For example, right now it's mango season, so it's able to understand that mango has come in season, and if you bought mango earlier, it slowly starts ranking it up as the season progresses. Next slide. So while the Smart Basket helps reduce shopping time, gives a very relevant list of products that the customer needs to buy, never allows the customers to forget a product, there is another challenge to this. While it reduces the time, it does not help in new product discovery for the customer. So it doesn't help in surfacing products that the customer may be interested in, but is not aware that it's available on BigBasket, or is not aware that this could be of interest to him. So therefore, we thought of actually interspersing recommendations into the Smart Basket. There are multiple algorithms that are available in the market, and one of them is the item-item collaborative filtering, which we adopted. I'll not get into the details of this algorithm. You could probably read up about it. It's largely but the basic principle is it understands which are those items that are present in baskets that are similar to one another, and therefore if it's not present in person's A's basket, it will recommend person's B's product to customer A. And typically, those of you who have a background of data sciences will know that there are two metrics that are used to measure this. One is precision and one is recall. And for those of you who know, you can skip this, but for the others, I'll just quickly cover this. Precision is, out of the SKUs that you have recommended, how many SKUs did the customer pick and buy? The recall is, out of the SKUs that the customer purchased, how many SKUs came from your recommendations? So therefore, we were able to achieve a recall of about 4%, which I think is pretty high, considering our basket sizes are actually pretty big. And most of the purchase is sort of repetitive in nature. Next slide. So the last two examples were how we were able to leverage data to provide a better customer experience while the customer is shopping on the app. The third example that I want to take is those channels that are available to a marketer to reach out to his customer in almost an organic and a free manner. We don't have to really spend a lot of money on these communication channels, which are largely push notifications, emails, maybe in-app notifications. And the next is really embedded in terms of the journey of the customer. So the banners that he sees, the listing and the ranking of the products that he sees either via browse or via search. So what we have attempted is to build a segmentation engine that is able to segment customers largely based on these three items in point number 2: life cycle, lifestyle, life stage, and there's another point which I'll cover in detail in the next slide. And we create these segments based on the products that the customer has purchased and the product pages that he has visited. Next slide. So the segmentation engine is really able to uh, understand based on the purchasing history of the customer what kind of a segment does he fall in these categories. One is the first one is BB life cycle. What this really covers is what is a life cycle with the customer. Is he a customer who has registered with us but not bought? Is he a customer who's just placed his first order? Has he placed two orders or n number of orders? Or is he a customer who's advanced, who's been associated with us for many years, who's bought items worth a lot of products, who's ordered a lot with us? So we have our own way of classifying these customers based on the frequency and recency and the monetary aspect of their purchases. The second thing is really segmenting them based on their lifestyle. For example, the customer could be a health conscious customer who buys organic, maybe gluten free, maybe nuts and seeds, greens, and so on. He could be a snacker who's buying a lot of Coke, Pepsi, probably Lay's snacks, and so on. uh, could be a person who's a tea drinker, coffee drinker, etc. For example, we've understood that South India is largely a coffee drinking geography, whereas North India is largely a tea drinking. While this sounds more like commonsensical, this is something that the engine is able to store, and we are able to use the leverage this engine in order to be able to target these customers in a more segmented way. The third thing is really life stage. So for example, is it a family with a baby? Do they have kids? Is it a pet owner? Is it a single income, no kids, double income, no kids? Is it a large family, and so on? The others, of course, is whether it's a deal seeking or price insensitive customers. For example, we've noticed that some of our very loyal customers value convenience more than price. And therefore, we're able to understand what marketing strategy could work on which micro segments. So the segmentation engine enables us to be able to first of all segment, and then we use the communication channels to target these customers with bespoke communication plus offers. Next slide. So these are the three examples that where we've used data in order to be able to provide a customized and best in class customer experience to the customer. And since this webinar is on marketing, I thought, why don't I cover 5 things that a marketer needs today. So firstly, the ability, you need to have the ability to deal with data, crunch and interpret. So what I mean is we need to understand what are those key metrics that one needs to track to understand the health of the health of the business, and also to understand the voice of the customer. So based on these metrics, you go back and figure out what are those all those data points that you need to collect in order to arrive at these metrics and to track them. Second is listen to your customer, and the customer is always speaking to you, whether it's on your Twitter feed, your other social media, whether it's Google Play reviews, whether it's your complaints that you get on to your customer service. They're always speaking to you. So listen to the customer. The third thing is how do you action data points? How do you action data points that sorry, I just had a bit of a disturbance there. Yeah, always listen to your customer and take action on this data that is coming in to you. So the third point is really, you can get lost with the amount of data that is coming in to e-commerce platform these days. So the very key part is you can continue to do analysis till, they say analysis paralysis, do analysis till the cows come home. But what is very important is we should not lose focus on the business goal. We should not lose focus on what action we need to take on these insights. So therefore, the ability to action the insights that come out of data. The fourth thing, and while this is not mandatory, I think it's becoming increasingly important, and I'll cover this. I'll take a few extra seconds to cover this. It's to understand basic product and tech. So especially when when organizations are small, everybody has a single goal, a single focus, and a drive that they're marching towards the same goal. But as organizations scale and they become a few lakh customers, it becomes increasingly hard to have a unified goal and a unified way of working. So most often you'll find that each of these functions, especially like retailers, large retailers like us, the product, tech, marketing, operations, everybody works in different silos. And therefore, I think the marketing team has a very key role to play in order to define the path of the entire company, especially with the help of product and tech. So what I mean by understanding basic product and tech is marketing can really understand what the customer needs, and therefore he has a very key position in enabling how product can actually evolve the product itself, and therefore how does a product write, let's say, a business spec document that translates into the tech document, and the tech finally delivering what the customer really wants. Most often I found marketer wants something, product develops something, a product thinks of something, tech develops something else. So these don't really match. So therefore it's very key for the marketer to play this sort of a unifying role. And the last thing I would ask people to do is really learn constantly. This market is ever evolving, data sciences is evolving, the customer is getting smarter and smarter by the day, the customer needs are evolving. So therefore, learn constantly. For example, if you want to take up a basic data sciences course, do so. If you think, what kind, if you need to take up a UI course which tells you, hey, what fonts work better, what colors are used in what context, what kind of an image to font ratio should you maintain for the right communication. So learn those tricks of the trade and continually evolve. So I think that's it from me, and I'll hand it over to Akshata.
Thank you, Pooja, for these insights. It's interesting how buying patterns, seasonal influence, lookalike recommendations can be used to offer a superior experience to your app users. We now know what goes on in the background as millions of users use the Big Basket app and are delighted by the experience that we get. So let's now turn towards HealthifyMe, India's largest fitness app that helps users develop the right diet and lifestyle to be healthy and happy. We have Anjan who's going to help us understand what makes HealthifyMe the most trusted health and fitness app by millions of users. So over to you, Anjan.
Thank you for having me, Akshita. I don't know how I'm going to follow up Pooja's brilliant presentation, but then I'm going to try and do my best. Can we move on to the first slide, please? So for those who do not know what HealthifyMe really does, HealthifyMe has been a 4.6 star rated app for the last 2 years. It is India's largest health and wellness app. It is also India's most loved health and wellness app. We have been the app of the year 3 times in a row. We won the editor's choice also. That comes with scale. We have been expanding from India and gone global. We have over 10 million users over our 7 years of lifetime. It will be surprising for most of you to know that we ramped up from 2 million users to 10 million users over the last 2 years. So the growth has been rapid, and I've been fortunate enough to be a part of the journey. So I want to quickly take you through what we do. But before that, if you can go to the next slide, Akshita. This is our footprint right now. While a lot of you may think that HealthifyMe is purely an Indian app, we are Indian at heart, but then we have penetrated into most markets around the world. What this map doesn't really give you an idea of is how deeply penetrated we are into the Southeast Asian market. We locally serve Singaporeans as well as Malay users from Malaysia. We are also in some parts of Indonesia. So that is how far reaching our impact has been over the last 7 years. But that does not come with a lot of product thinking. And hence, we are going to move on to the next section. Akshata, can you move on? The importance of personalization. Now, let me first give you an idea of what we do. We are pretty much the world's largest calorie tracker. We help you understand what foods you eat, what's good for you, what's bad for you. In many cases, we also help you with workouts. You could get a coach. That's a premium model. You could get a coach, a nutritionist, and a fitness trainer. They will guide you with diet and workout plans. Or we also have a new offering called the Smart Plan, which is an AI-based plan. It was built over 350,000 data points of diet plans, over 800 million food logs. So that is the scale at which we operate right now, and hence we could build an AI model out of it, and that's a separate premium offering. But at the base of this is what we do. We are a calorie tracker. We also allow access to nutritionists and fitness trainers. But the most important thing to note is the kind of user that comes in. Every user that comes in has a different goal in mind. It could be a 40-year-old a woman from Ludhiana, it could be a 22-year-old IT engineer from Bangalore, it could be a 30-year-old doctor from Singapore. All of them have two things in common. They want to either get fitter by losing weight or gaining muscle. And for that, they require motivation and they require enough amount of information about the kind of foods that they eat or the kind of exercises that they should perform. But what differentiates all these three personas that I just mentioned is the fact that each one of them have their own preferences. People eat non-vegetarian food, vegetarian food. In India, especially, there are many people who would not eat non-vegetarian food on, say, Tuesdays. So what happens in that case? Are they not going to consume protein on a Tuesday? That doesn't make sense. So that's where HealthifyMe steps in, helps you understand what you consume and how good or bad it is for you. That being said, it is important also to gather the right kind of data to personalize the user's experience throughout their journey to fitness. So what do we do? Moving on to the next slide, we try and gather just about enough information to give back to the user as early as possible in their journey. When a person installs the app, we probably know whether the users come through an organic channel or an inorganic marketing channel. We would know which ad campaign did they come through. While that one variable will not help us, we also try and collect 10 variables during onboarding. These are typically name, age, gender, their height, and the weight, so that we can calculate their calorie budget, how much they should eat in a particular day. And we also try and get the location because we are global now. Our app is completely personalized based on where you're from. In fact, there's a large difference between how a person from South India would see the app versus a person from North India would see the app. So that's the level of personalization that we've gone to. But these 10 variables, going back to the 10 variables, these 10 variables kind of lay the base for us. It kind of helps us understand just about enough about the user to keep him motivated and to also give them contextual information throughout their journey. The second point, I mentioned something about unlocking variables. So it is almost a sin for us to collect information and not use it. But it's a larger sin if we actually have to use all the information up front, because a change in lifestyle to get fitter happens over a period of time, and you need to always give refreshing content to your users. So how do we do it? For example, let me take an example of a person who is diabetic from, say, Bangalore, lives in Indanagar and has access to a lot of healthy food around her, right? And it's a female. Now, let's see how that journey would go, right? So we have all these details. The first day on the app would go just into understanding what calorie counting is. Why should you count calories? Why should you eat only that much? How much weight will you lose? And how much time if you ate only those many calories? So what have we unlocked over there? We actually kind of unlocked the person's calorie budget based on their height and weight. We kind of unlocked the fact that the person is a woman, which means that we would kind of have a different kind of messaging for a woman versus male. For males in general, we are a little more sterner in India, to be very honest, versus women, we are a little more softer in India. It's about the tone of communication at that point in time. And the next day, we will probably talk about how it is important to take care of the person's eating habits in terms of what they should eat to kind of control or prevent diabetes. As I mentioned, this person is a diabetic user from Bangalore. And the third day, we would finally land up talking about South Indian foods available in Bangalore that help a person control diabetes. Now, that's the way we kind of unlock different variables. This is just one of the many examples that we use. We have over 600 segments of users. Each user goes through a different journey. This is the ideal state that I'm talking about, but then there is still a lot of scope for improvement when it comes to personalization. It's a never-ending process. But when I talk about, us communicating to the user in a particular tone, us communicating to the user about a particular variable that we've learned about the user, what do we do? So at HealthifyMe, we use something called reminders. We kind of tell the user that, you should come and log your food tonight so that you get to know whether your dinner was healthy or not. We generally send out a reminder in the morning and in the night to make sure that they log their food. We send out reminders to track water throughout the day, trying to build a habit around it. And now, even with reminders, we kind of throttle it down after, say, 2 or 3 days. The user is turning out to be not too interested because we realize that health and wellness is a cyclical process. A person would come back after, say, 6 months, after a week, after 1 month. We respect that. And when the user comes back, all our engines turn on again. We try and keep them motivated again. But then if a person is falling off the bandwagon, we try and hold on to them for as long as possible. But then after that, we let them float until they realize that it's important for them to take care of their health. Similarly, we have content pieces in the app. The first screenshot on the left hand side talks about it. It kind of shows you what kind of content we put out. We put out recipes, we put out a lot of content that's specific to users. We do not actually generalize. In fact, if a male receives a notification about PCOS, which is a female condition, it is most probably purposely targeted because we probably know that you are interested in a topic that is close to that. Maybe you're looking out for your wife, maybe you're looking out for your girlfriend, your sister, it doesn't matter. But then we try and do those kind of analytics, those kind of algorithms to kind of predict what kind of content you like. Finally, of course, as I said, we have premium services. The second screenshot is of a coach and what happens when you get a couple of coaches to help you out. Now, in the upgrade flows, it doesn't make sense to monetize the user unless the user really knows what they get into. Especially in the case of services, that's what we deal with. So what we try and do is try and give them the best coaches that are personalized, that would give them a personalized experience. For example, a person from Delhi would generally talk to a person from Delhi who is good at speaking in Hindi, for example, who understands the Delhi culture, who understands the kind of foods that you get around them. Right? So it's something that we take care of to make sure that multiple parts of the journey, these are just 3 parts, of multiple parts of the journey, we try and unlock variables that we've learned about the user to try and serve them better. One thing that I'm not covered in this slide is the fact that these are just 10 variables that I'm talking about, but then there are millions of variables that come in as soon as a user starts using the app. Now, the behavior of the user, for example, if a person had tea this morning with milk and sugar, then our job is to tell them that the next morning, did you have tea with milk and sugar? Then you should ideally not be having sugar or try and cut down on sugar because sugar causes, it accumulates, causes an increase in the fat percentage in your body eventually if you do not exercise enough. So all those things, all those little nuggets of information come in as and when the user uses the app. So it gets richer and richer, the experience and it gets richer over a period of time. Okay, we can move on to the next line of stuff. Now, while we covered how we personalize the app, which is very important in most app cases, right? I mean, if you are a product manager working for an app company, personalization is very important. There's also a duty of product managers to get back to marketing about what works and what doesn't work. So how do we do it at HealthifyMe? So at HealthifyMe, the first thing that defines what marketing does is generally the goal of the company. Since the health and wellness industry is a kind of a seasonal industry, you will see that a lot of people start working out, start taking care of their health around the beginning of the year because of resolutions, of course, and then they taper off throughout the year. So our business is also built that way. We would generally look at heavy amounts of monetization and us building out new funnels, new monetization methods during the first half of the year. For example, as I mentioned, point number 3, we kind of look at different funnel flows. Should we give a free trial to a user, or should we give the user just a free consultation? A free trial is a 7-day premium experience, which is more costly for the company. Or should we give them a free consultation? Or should we just, if the user is a very high intention, we just let the user understand what the plans are and purchase by themselves. So these are decisions that we take on a daily basis for each of the 600 segments that we have designed for. And then we look at revenue per registration, which is a regular metric. I'm pretty sure all of you looking at it. Marketing payback for us is also very important. If we spend X amount of money, how long does it take for us to recover that X amount of money? So these three things are the largest variables that we look at when we are looking at the monetization phase, which is the first half of the year. Second half of the year generally goes into the engagement phase. This is basically trying to give back to our users even more than we do right now, trying to understand what users really want. This is the time of the year when most innovation in the company happens. So what we generally look at then is day three retention. That is basically the percentage of users who come back on day three of the journey to log food or open the app and read something. Onboarding completion, of course, is North Star metric for most companies. Food logging behavior is the most important thing for us. We try and understand how a user can be motivated to log food because the fact that that is what causes habit formation in the case of weight loss. As most people say, abs are made in the kitchen. That's only because of the fact that 80%, most research studies say that 80% of your weight loss journey is generally because of your food habits. So that's why food logging behavior is very important for us to create impact, and hence we measure that pretty seriously. So what we do, we try and see what variables generally affect these North Star metrics at any point in time. We try and see whether a person who is coming from a particular town in India is more tuned towards being engaged more, or the person does not understand how the app works. So this is the kind of feedback that we give back to marketing, so that if the app is ready for a particular segment of users, then it is time to bring those kind of users in. The same way we did it in Malaysia and Singapore, right? So it's the same thing. When we moved from India to Malaysia and Singapore, we try to actually go there, figure out whether certain things work for the Malaysian audience, whether certain things work for the Singaporean audience. And then we decided to roll it out full scale after a little bit of studies. What we learned over there, a very important learning, was the fact that different ethnicities work very differently. For us, we learned that the app was very ready for the Indian ethnicity because of the fact that Indians in Malaysia behave like Indians in India, whereas the Malay ethnicity audience were very, very different versus the Indians. So we had to actually build out different parts of the app and then tell marketing that, listen, we are finally ready. It looks like Malay users can come in the boards now. Moving on to the next slide, the final slide of the presentation is about internal marketing strategy. It's often very important that what the marketing team talks to the outside world while they are putting out ads, or collaterals, or trying to build a brand. Is very important that that same language is spoken inside the app. So what we try and do is actually build segments. We try and understand how each one of our 600 segments work. Now, not every segment is meant to be monetized. Not every segment is meant to be retail. That's our learning, because different segments behave differently. There are high intent users, there are low intent users. Now, each one of those segments, we try and map it with a goal. For example, a user who's coming from the US who requires coaches who speak at night. We probably cannot stick to him at Indian time night, right? So we probably do not have the capacity for it then. So what do we do then? The goal for that user is, we try and understand how to retain them while they see the weight loss goal happen. How do we actually make sure that they stay on track with the right kind of reminders every day? So the focus goes into making sure that every single segment has a goal against it, and we try and achieve that goal against that segment. So what we do while trying to achieve that goal is we try and map content pieces to it. For example, we have something called in-app feeds that I mentioned about. We have little articles that are written. They are all written for specific segments. We realize that retention is dropping for a segment where the goal is retention. Then we know that that is where we are going to concentrate for the next, say, week, for the month, until the point where the retention goes up. Similarly, notifications are extremely personalized. Small nugget of intelligence, or rather discovery over here, was the fact that when we went to Malaysia, we started using a lot of notifications that were very similar to how the Indian audience works, right? We thought the click rates would be very similar. But then we realized that in Malaysia, if you do not use the user's name in the notification, in India we use it a lot, and we actually put in an emoji. The emoji itself got us a 2x click rate versus in India. So small things like that happen only through experimentation, of course. But then it's also very important to understand what that small segment is and how small should that segment be. The smaller segment, the harder the problem. But if your segment is large enough, if it's in like the lakhs or in a couple of lakhs, then it's a little easier to serve them and see a bump in any metric that you would like to move. I think that brings me to the end of how we do marketing inside and outside the app, as well as how we personalize the app. Over to you, Akshita.
Thank you, Anjan. I think that was all great information, a lot of learnings for us listening to you. And it's incredible how you guys have weaved in every little aspect of the user, their local preferences into the experience they get on the product. I think the passion that you guys have for the customer experience is phenomenal. Okay, so I think that brings us to the next part of our webinar. I'm going to go through the questions. We have a little time, so I'll try and cover as many questions as we can right now. The first question that's come in is for Pooja. How do you tap in other platforms, non-owned platforms like social media, and sort of loop in that customer information to customize your emails or push communication?
Sorry, if I have to understand the question, it's saying how do you
Yeah, I
get.
think the question is how do you leverage data from third party non-owned platforms, which means not your website, not your app, but customer interactions from platforms like social media to
Mhm.
customize your marketing communication on emails and push, is what the question is.
Understood. I think it's a lot harder to. So Google and Facebook don't really share data with us, and they don't. I mean, that's really their proprietary data that they have collected through their platforms. That's something that was at a customer ID level, if we can call it. But I think the best that we
I'm
do.
sorry, Pooja, could you, I think there's some sound disruption at your end. Could you just, we
Can
lost you
you
for a
hear
bit.
me now? Can you hear me now?
No, the volume is a little lower.
1 second. Hello.
Yeah, yeah,
Is it
please.
audible now?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
So I was saying the social media, platforms, either Google or Facebook, they don't really share any data about at a customer level with us because I mean that's really the proprietary data and that's the crux of their platforms. But really, I think the best that we can right now do is, for example, if a customer identifies himself, those complaints actually, online and they have a complaint or a feedback, those complaints, if we are able to recognize the customer, we are able to tag those customers that, this guy actually complained on this particular issue. That is, I think, the best that we can do. But um, but the other way around is something that we use in the sense that remarketing on social media or on Google platform is possible by using our user data. So we submit the sort of email IDs of the users to these platforms, and we are able to target them in a customized way. I don't know if this answers the exact question, but
Thank you. I think, yeah, that's great. Next question for you, Anjan. What are some sources of data that we cannot overlook?
Oh, source of data. Depends on the kind of business that you're into. Um, for example, if you are in the business that does, for example, I don't know, a highly monetizable business, for example, your e-commerce businesses and your payment gateways, etc., if you're trying to find the buying power of the user, then most probably your user properties, such as the phone, the make of the phone, when did they buy it, how old is the model, etc. Those kind of things actually may give you more insights into the willingness to pay of the customer versus the behavior of the customer in the app itself. I mean, at least as far as I'm concerned, that's what I've seen. Whereas if it's an app that is meant to be a long-ranging journey for a user, such as in the case of HealthifyMe, such as in the case of any mental wellness app, any habit formation app, then I would say that your user behavior probably will trump your user properties, such as your device, the model, etc., everything that I mentioned. The user behavior will probably trump everything else. So that's how I would look at it. It's generally a combination of both, but there will be certain variables that will have a larger impact on your goal.
All right, I think that was helpful. And I have, I think, time just for one last questions, which I think I would ask both of you. What are some good sources to learn and stay updated on data-driven marketing and customer engagement? So, what are your go-to sources?
Okay, if I could go first, I think there's a lot of content that's already available across Google. I think you just search and you're able to find content in general. It really depends on those questions, but I think a good starting point are online course providers like Coursera, Udemy, and even Google Analytics platform principle courses. There's just a lot of fundamental stuff that you require to just get a quick basic understanding of digital marketing. So I would say Google Analytics platform principle is a must do for anybody who wants to get into digital marketing. The second one would also be I think they have a course on app marketing basics as well. So that's also a very useful course. So whatever free, and there's a lot of free content already available. So as far as possible, I think you can study whatever you want freely. And then there is always support in form of Quora or in the form of Stack Overflow in case you want to get a little more technical. uh, if you want to learn basics of SQL, which helps you sort of dig into the data yourself, there's just enough freely available online resources.
From my perspective, there are a couple of things. So, what I personally do is try and subscribe to as many Medium articles as possible that are specific to my liking, generally around product. That really helps. But I've seen, at least in the recent past, that some of the best articles are generally written by platforms. The multiple platforms that serve companies. I don't know whether I should take names, but the multiple platforms that work across multiple apps. They help app companies get better. So from my perspective, when I look at it as a product owner and an app company, what I would look at is what are those platforms saying. They generally have some brilliant results in terms of your retention figures. They kind of benchmark it for you, and this changes year on year, guys. If you go back to 2016 and look at the stats right now, you will see that the uninstall rates have probably gone up in certain certain industries and gone down in certain industries. So that's something that I really look at. One last thing is actually reverse engineering. This is interesting because I don't know how many of you have access to any comparative analysis, but then if you are doing any sort of comparative analysis anywhere, it could be a free, it could be anywhere. It could be just a Google Trends search. That itself kind of gives you a lot, because of the fact that you will see that if you're looking at other companies in the same space growing in certain ways, you can always reverse engineer what they're doing when it comes to the external world, especially in terms of marketing. You can always see what kind of collaterals they're going out. There will most probably be a Facebook page where you can go and see what they're putting out. So that's one way of looking at things. It's always good to be on top of what your competitors are doing. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, I think that's good information, and a lot of sites and a lot of sources that you mentioned for self-learning. I'm sure our audience has made their notes. We have one last question, if you would like to take that just before we wrap up, because it's very interesting, which just came in. How do you create a data-driven culture for your team?
Okay. Anjan, you want to go first or should I go?
No, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a very, very good question, very pertinent. This is one, I think I missed covering this point, though. This point was something that I wanted to touch upon. So it's good that you guys asked this question. So when I said, what does a marketer need, or it's largely what organizations need right now, especially in multifunction companies. So while data is available, a very critical part of this is how do you interpret data and figure out what kind of story the data is actually saying. So in my experience, I've found that people can twist the data to tell the story that they want to be told. They can expose parts of data that makes, let's say, um, makes the output that they have put in look better, or they can even make it worse. Let's say it's a competitor team, and you can make it look very different. So I think it's not an easy thing, especially when the market is evolving and more data is being used to answer business questions. So this culture has to actually come from the top. uh, and it has to come either from the founders or from the CXOs of the company and flow down to the last person. And the other way to do it is really it has to become part of the sort of guiding principles of the company. That we trust data. When in doubt, use data. But so, and it also comes with experience on ground. So what really is required is for for the person who is using data, and all of us could be data practitioners in our company in various ways, is to be very impersonal, a dispassionate, objective when you're looking at data. Firstly, have very high clarity on what is your hypothesis. So if you have a problem, a business problem, let's say customer complaints, I'll take the example of BigBasket. Customer complaints are increasing in fruits and vegetables. So have a hypothesis when you have this kind of a question. Probably, the first important thing about data is getting the right data, creating the right data points, collecting the right data, creating a data architecture that helps you answer all these questions. Now, once you have your data and tech platform stable and steady, working, delivering results in a short time, then it is about how do you frame the right questions. So creating your hypothesis very clearly, and then defining what are those metrics or data points that would help you answer this hypothesis, prove this hypothesis, either which way. So have a very high focus. And then once you get your answer, sometimes we are biased, that I think this could be the reason, and therefore we look at data that could potentially give us a biased answer. So it's very, very critical to be objective. However, there are times when the data will not give you the right answer. And at that point in time, you have to be able to use some of your experience to, take a decision, right? And so, therefore, coming back to the point is that when looking at data, one needs to be dispassionate, one needs to have very high clarity of thought in framing the right hypothesis or question. And therefore, how do you drive this culture across it could be down into your own teams, or it could be peers. Largely these are the two use cases that I found. I'm not sure if there are use cases of um, you know helping your superior get a data driven mindset. But what is important is to continually fall back onto data whenever there is a question or a doubt in terms of how do you move, how do you solve a problem, how do you solve a business question. So you'll have to keep going back to reports, going back to metrics, going back to framing those questions and framing more questions. If this data point doesn't give you answer, what is the next level of analysis that you need to do? What is the next level of deep dive that you need to do to get that answer? And therefore, when you keep repeating and falling back to data, I think that culture will spread. So I think, long story short, um, firstly, you have clarity of thought, and therefore have the ability to ask the right questions and help others within your team or your peers apply these two principles. So clarity of thought and framing the right questions. And when you keep doing it repeatedly, while being dispassionate about your own biases, I think you'll be able to drive a data-driven culture in the organization.
I love the way Pooja put that across. I completely agree with everything that Pooja said. I can't really pinpoint on one thing that I could have said better. But there's something similar to what Pooja said. Building the culture. So at least I can tell you from the Healthy Family product perspective how we do it. We are extremely data driven. We have in fact moved government policies because of the fact that we've been so data driven. We collect enough data and have the ability to analyze it. But one thing that we do is if a product idea is ever discussed and internally or with a stakeholder or externally, what we generally do is try and see whether there's enough data to back it up. Now, if there is not enough data to back it up, what we do is we end up doing a quick intuitive leap. Now, when we do an intuitive leap, my entire team has just one rule that we follow diligently. If you're not able to make an intuitive leap and prove or disprove your intuition within a 5 day period, which is a specific 5 day period at HealthifyMe, it's based on how our sprints run. If you're not able to do that in 5 days, it'll be ruthlessly killed. That product idea is ruthlessly killed, and we will not pursue it for a very long time to come. Whereas if you have a data backed idea, even if it's going to take you a month to develop it as a product owner, we will give you a go ahead. So that in turn actually sets in the process of thinking about it from a more data oriented approach. Because if you're taking an intuitive leap, you're definitely going to be limited by the amount of time you have to execute. So that's how we do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Anjan. Thank you, Pooja, for taking those questions and sharing your answers. There are a few more questions that have not been answered, but we are really running out of time. So what we're going to do is share these questions with both the speakers, and we'll have their answers and share it with all our attendees today via email. We'll also be addressing those questions and writing about it in a blog that's going to follow soon. So you can also check the More Engage blog for that. All right, so that brings us to the end of the webinar, and a big thank you, Anjan and Pooja, for taking time out to share your stories and learnings with us. This has been a very insightful discussion, and I, for one, I'm sure I'm going home a smart marketer. I'm sure our listeners will agree with me. There've been a lot of learnings. I've made my notes. I'm sure they've made as well. A big thank you to our audience for staying with us and for your active participation. We'll share a recording of this webinar and also the blog. So stay tuned. Thank you, Anjan and Pooja, once again, and signing off. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.